one of the most important things that you will learn if you go to graduate school, if you get a PhD, if you do a innovative endeavor or an entrepreneurial endeavor, is that nobody cares, right? Anything that you are very passionate about, you have to realize that nobody cares. And you have to really, really, really process what I'm saying. It's such a hard lesson and it's such a painful lesson to come to terms with the fact that the market that you're talking to does not freaking care, right? And given that, once you process that assumption and once you really think about that assumption, they don't care about you, they don't care about your idea, they don't care about anything other than themselves, right? Everybody's very self interested. Really hard thing to think about. And like super hard to process. Once you deal with that, you start making decisions a lot differently. So first of all, you get the sort of belief that screw them. I'm just going to do this because I love to do this thing, right? Like you need to understand that that is going to be an important part of what you're going to do. The second thing is you're going to have to learn how to manage your emotions and learn how to process this, given that the market is going to give you a great big shrug and they do not care. They 100% do not care, right? And then, the third thing is you're going to have to start changing your actions in terms of what you're going to think about and prioritize. And I think vastly, we do a poor job of doing this in education, of getting people to think about what it is that you should be doing. So, yesterday, one of the sort of funnest experiments that I've started doing in the last couple of years is I get people to get out of the classroom and tell them to figure it out on their own. So the problem was really simple. They had, at the beginning of the class, they came up with an idea. They all had to do a 5 minute pitch, or what, they had 5 minutes to come up with an idea and then pitch the idea to the class. And then we all ranked it, and then after, they had to go raise money. So they had to get out of the classroom and raise $10. Um, and they just had to ask people. They had to go around, pitch their idea, and ask people and see what the response was. It was a super interesting experiment because they got a feeling of what it actually means. Not only the nervousness you feel, the fact that you don't want to do it, the fact that you basically want to puke, the fact that everybody is going to look at you and think that you're crazy, and they do, and the fact that the majority of them failed at it. The majority of the classroom comes back with nothing. And then they have to think about, how do I deal with this? What do I do? Am I a failure? Is this just, am I terrible? And then I was really ruthless at the end, where we just looked at all these ideas and I just er- erased the ones that didn't work, right? And it hurts. The whole process hurts, but it's such a reality check of realizing what you're going to go through. And the interesting thing is that they worked on it for about 5 minutes, and when at the end, and I was thinking about this after they work on it for 5 minutes and they feel crushed at the end when nothing happens, even though they only spent 5 minutes sort of thinking about this particular thing and coming to terms with it. Now, the more challenging thing is I've sort of painfully come to terms with, and never really come to terms with it, but I realize this is just the market. Is that if you spend years and a great deal of money on something, the market is not going to care. They are self-centered. So not only, that they were going to a very forgiving audience, right? It was mostly students, mostly friends. They're asking. Somebody asked me, I gave them $1. Um, you know, the painful thing is thinking through how do you deal with this on a daily basis that you're getting up and people are going to tell you no, or people are going to laugh at you, or, any number of things, right? The market does not care. What do you do? So you find the thing that captures the market's feelings, right? Or you build a connection or whatever. We talked about, why some people were more successful than others. And, what does it mean when you didn't result in sort of getting the thing that you wanted? Um, all of those kind of things, right? Where you sit there and you process this and you have to think about it. Am I a failure? Am I the problem? Is the product the problem? Is the market just dumb, right? So ultimately, you have to come to terms with. I mean, it's all of that, right? Like the huge part of it is just realizing that all of that comes into play, and you got to say no. I think you either have to determine no, what I'm doing is actually right, and this is good, um, or you say I'm not going to do this ever again, right? And I hope it's the former. It's the first one where you decide no, I don't think that this is right. I think what I'm doing is a good thing, and the market needs to come to terms with what I'm actually doing. And then you've got to do the hard work of figuring this out. Not only that, but like figuring out how to capture people and getting them interested and getting them excited. And I don't know how to do that, right? Like I don't. The only thing I knew, and this came up, is just do it 10,000 times. That's it, right? Like I don't know. Well, I can't tell you. I don't know what the right answer is with any of that. And if you did it 10,000 times and still didn't work out with you, it doesn't mean that it's a flop. It doesn't mean any of that stuff, but it could be if you let it, right? And that's all of this stuff is such a hard lesson. And I think the only way that you can teach that, right? Because otherwise you come into it, right? Like the responses are so like, I try to get people to think as practically as possible, right? Because the responses are so typically not very good because that they're people are sort of thinking academically or thinking of the answers that people have given them, and frankly nobody's done it, right? Until you actually do it, until you try something like that and you get people discounting you, or the market just telling you I don't care, until you experience that you don't know what to do, right? And you have to have that feeling, that strong feeling of screw it, I'm just going to do this. Um, and I'm not going to listen to the market as it stands, or I'm going to listen to it and see what it's saying and tweak what I'm actually saying, right? And get that right messaging to get it so that people actually understand where I'm coming from. And that is a hard thing, right? Like, so, one of it was kind of really fun because a couple of the people in the classroom are pretty good at sales, and they've never sold anything that doesn't exist before. And that's a really different thing. Um, and, when you come back, you feel really, so the ones that won and made, they're super excited, right? Like, oh, I did it. Um, and then, the ones that didn't, they felt very defeated, and I could see it in their eyes. So, that feeling of how do you manage that? And then the other thing that's interesting, somebody asked, what do I do with this money? Um, I was like, well, it's their loss. They invested in you. You do whatever you want to do with it. Um, and then they were kind of torn with this. right? What that means. And I know what they're going to do is they're just going to go spend that money. And then I'm going to talk to them later. I'm going to ask them, what do they do with the money? And, um, ideally, what you should do with an investor is you come back and you give them $15. They give you 10, you give them 15. And then they're going to be excited to be participating with you. But almost all of them will waste the money and have it disappear, and then they got to figure out this on their own, right? And so having this exercise, knowing that the market does not care, knowing that you could stand up and not a single person's going to look at you, um, that's a good lesson. You learn that when you do your PhD massively, when you go to a conference and you're the only one in the room presenting, the only one, right? That's happened to me. Um, and or you do something entrepreneurial and nobody freaking cares, and so you got to figure out what to do. Great lesson, super painful, but you got to figure it out. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.